as you've probably noted, that little group at the beginning of this video are the drivers that will be leaving their teams. They'll be saying goodbye to them at the end of this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Sad occasions, really, in probably every case, particularly that's the cap, that's the jacket. Sergio Perez from Racing Point. Let's hope against hope that he will be in Formula One next year racing, which is what he does incredibly well. As I said in the video after Sakhir, he's never driven better, and it would be such a shame not to see him in Formula One next year. Anyway, welcome back to Lewis Hamilton. Had a pretty good trouble-free, well, I say trouble-free, it was a relatively straightforward day so far as getting data, testing the new Pirelli tyres, and some new bits on the Mercedes as well, so far as that went. Although right at the end of free practice 2, which was a more important session because the ambience, the track conditions were much nearer those of the race on Sunday. Lewis's last run, when he was out on mediums, he'd been on the Pirelli test tower up until then, was ruined really because of he couldn't get any gears and did one lap, came in, they changed the steering wheel, and by the time he went out, the session was over. So that was a little bit disappointing for Lewis, but he looked good in the car, looked just like the old Lewis. I think already it's kind of back to normal. There's George Russell back at Williams. Actually, George didn't have the greatest of days, as it happens. The second session, unusual these days, got to say, the red light over the rollover hoop, which is an indication there's some drama going on with the electrics on the car. And these are hybrids, don't forget. Meant that all the Williams boys had to get out of and girls had to get out of the garage and just let the car settle down a bit. So that was a bit of a drama, lost a bit of time, but I don't think George is that worried about it after what happened in Sakhir. As I said in the last video, his career very much on course, even though at the moment it's difficult to see exactly where it's heading in 2021. Anyway, to the immediate happenings of today and some data from that. The afternoon session was really one that counted. We're talking 24 degrees ambient, 28 degree track temperature, a little bit cooler than it had been during the FP1 during the day. Valtteri Bottas quickest in the end, 36.2, which he did on the soft tyre and the medium. Lewis did a 36.0 and would have been slightly quicker, but that time was deleted on the medium tyre for a track limits drama coming out of the last corner. But I include that 36.0 only because it was a really, really close shave as to whether Lewis was over the track limits. Obviously, it set off a sensor, but at the same time, whether or not he would have been any slower had he used slightly less track, I don't know. So Mercedes, interestingly, choosing to run the Pirelli test tyre on the long runs in the last 25 minutes of FP2, so we don't have that much data of where they stand on the hard and the medium, but for sure they'll be quick. But in terms of that tyre, it actually looked like a pretty good tyre, not too much degradation, although how quick it is remains to be seen. Lewis did a 42.7, don't know how much fuel was on board, but on the hard tyre, and Sergio Perez did the longest, most meaningful runs in FP2 on the hard tyre, particularly did a 42.2 on the hard, and with very little degradation at all. So that was a very good run by Perez. They had Lance Stroll, I say they, Racing Point had Lance Stroll simultaneously on the medium tyre, and he was doing 43. So Sergio looking really good on that hard tyre. And just to repeat the point, it doesn't look as if the soft tyre has a massive advantage over the mediums. So qualifying tomorrow could be really interesting to see how many drivers, and it could be more than most, go out on the medium tyre in Q2. So on the hard tyre, Sergio Perez looking really good. Lando, Norris and Esteban Ocon also ran the hard, but were second a lap slower than Sergio, so he's looking very strong. And I just had to think when he got to the track and he walked into the paddock area and met the guys again and the girls and climbed into the car and went out, how better he would have been feeling, how much he would have been enjoying this moment. Because there is nothing like getting into a Grand Prix car when you have won your first race. Everything kind of, I remember Dan Gurney, I mean, okay, it wasn't his first win, but remember when he won the Belgian Grand Prix with the Eagle in '67, his own car. He said it to us actually, but he's probably said it to many people, but when he flew back from Spa, and in those days flying was a little bit more dangerous than it is now, his thought was, well, I don't really care what happens now because I've done it. And that is, you know, anything can happen to me now and I'll be okay with it. And I'm sure Sergio's a little bit like that. Obviously, there's the issue of what he's going to be doing next year and the disappointment if he's not going to be in Formula One. But if anything is going to soften that blow, it is having won Sakhir. And he looks to be in pretty good shape for Abu Dhabi as well. Then he takes another glitch at the factory Mercedes team, who no doubt will have different radio protocols this weekend. And Sergio will be right there again. He looks pretty good alongside Max Verstappen too. Max did good runs on the medium tyre and the soft. On the medium, 41.7, so obviously very quick, and on the soft, 41.5. He was quickest of all the runners. When they were out with fuel on board, he was quickest of all the runners there. But then again, as I say, at that point, Mercedes were running the Pirelli tyre and Sergio Perez is on the hard tyre. So Max looking pretty good. Alex Albon complaining of understeer. So I'm assuming that, again, Red Bull in that zone of having to take out a bit of wing from the car, and there isn't the huge comfort zone that they would normally have. But Alex, as you can see from the times, was actually quite good on the soft tyre and the medium when he was out there running. And in terms of overall times, you can say 0.2 of a second slower than Max. Although I don't think that was a great comparison in terms of when they were out, and of course what states their respective cars were in at that point. Ferrari struggling, no real surprise. Sadly, both drivers went out on the soft tyre after about half an hour of FP2, and Charles Leclerc got in a pretty good lap. That stood in for about P6 at the time, right at the sort of middle of the midfield bunch. And just look at the times actually. At the end of FP2, there were no fewer than 6 cars all doing 37.5. That shows how competitive it is. Lando Norris just ahead of that group, but Charles Leclerc in that group as well on 37.5. That was all a soft tyre run by those guys in the midfield there. The long runs were massively interrupted by Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari engine in his Alfa Romeo catching fire, massive fire. Kimi brought it all to a halt, jumped out on the radio saying, get out, Kimi. But there was a big fire at the back of it. And in the end, Kimi took the fire extinguisher from the marshal and had to go himself to get it out. Good to see that. FP1 was notable also for Mick Schumacher having his first public appearance in a Formula One car. He drove the Haas and he drove it very well. He was 0.2 slower, ended up 0.2 slower than Nicholas Latifi. Not that that's any sort of yardstick at all, because the Haas is probably a slightly quicker car than the Williams right now. But having said that, for Mick just to jump in and go that well and to drive that cleanly, very nice to see. Nice to see the SCH diminutive on the timing sheets again as well. So good job, Mick Schumacher. And Pietro Fittipaldi actually did a pretty good job in the Haas in the afternoon as well. They had a DRS problem, but despite that, he sort of keeps going and does a good job. So all credit to him as well. So that was it. Abu Dhabi, as ever, looked gorgeous as the sun was going down. But for me, the real moment of this day was when Fernando Alonso got back into a 2005 Renault V10 engine. I mean, why did we get rid of those engines? Just sounded gorgeous. 550 kilo car and just breath of fresh air, wasn't it? I wouldn't be surprised to see Fernando go for a lap record this weekend when he gets back in the car Saturday and Sunday, but it was wonderful to see. Thanks for watching. See you after qualifying and then again after the race on Sunday.